Hey friends, good news. Jesus is officially out of the basement. This is amazing news. We're going to talk to you about this prophetic act that is really more than just symbolic. I think it really speaks of a clash of worldviews that's going on in America right now. We're going to talk about President Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia and Qatar and talk about this whole idea of nation building, something that was very popular under the Bush administration. We're going to talk about why it doesn't work and why the president has recognized that's not really the lane of government. And what is the lane of government? We're going to get into all those issues and, of course, the important issue of developing a national identity and why we need to know who we are as Americans before we can flourish together. These and a host of other important things are going to be discussed on our podcast today. You will not want to miss it.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
We are so glad you guys are with us again. This is a highlight of our week to be able to talk about things that matter and to have you join us in the discussion. And once again, I just appreciate when folks come up, and as they do to both of us, and give us some feedback and let us know that what we're talking about matters to you and is helpful to you and something that you enjoy listening to each week. And please help us by spreading the word far and wide, helping to get more and more exposure from this podcast. If you are benefiting from it, you probably have a circle of friends who could equally benefit from it. And so we appreciate you sharing that. This is going to be a really, really great week for us here at Living Stones, as every week is. But I want to highlight a couple of things. Number one is the worldview class that you will be hearing about as I'm talking about now, but you just missed. Will be Matthew. I've had a lot of people ask us about this. We're going to be editing those. We're going to be kind of polishing up, putting in quotes, slides, all of that. It's a time-consuming process. Have we talked at all about when we're going to make this available, roughly? No. As soon as possible. But the good news is it is being recorded, and it will be made available. But if you're hearing me talk about it now, you just missed it. But what has been amazing is the fact that I've heard feedback from folks not only about our podcast, but about that class that is really, really helping them. It's like aha moments, helping them understand worldview and the way that worldview impacts the world. And I wanted to highlight that just by kicking off our podcast today with some history-making news that came out this week. Evidently, there was a historic World War II era painting that had adorned the walls of the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy for nearly 8 decades. 80 years, folks, quietly removed during the Biden administration. Here's why it was removed. The painting was titled Christ on the Water. I saw a picture of the painting. It was a beautiful rendition of Jesus walking on the water. There was a group of soldiers who were stranded in a boat on a turbulent sea, cowering down, and the whole idea was, hey, we can turn to Christ during times of crisis. That was removed. It was put in the basement. And it was now retrieved from the basement and pulled back out. In fact, Secretary Duffy, appointed by President Trump, said, "We are moving Jesus out of the basement." He declared to midshipmen who responded with an enthusiastic applause. Senator Ted Cruz also voiced support, noting there were no constitutional reasons to keep the painting hidden. Of course, the painting was hidden because we are dealing with two competing worldviews in America, even to this day. This whole idea that anything religious has to be removed from the public arena, which of course we know, if you've been in our worldview, is absolutely impossible. Every worldview is religious because every worldview starts with faith assumptions. So you can't remove Jesus from public, put him in the basement, and call that neutrality. But that's what previous administrations did, and it was actually an open hostility towards Christ or towards anything Christian about our nation. So I know this is not a massive news item, but it is a profoundly prophetic statement that Jesus is no longer in the basement, that Jesus is being put on full display. And I think on a larger scale, that Christianity is no longer being isolated to the basement, but is welcome again in our public life.
Yeah.
So anyway, praise the Lord for that. Jesus never belongs in the basement.
Well, how about just the fact that there is a superior being that watches over people's shoulder, and that the people in government are not truly unaccounted for? That there is a true accountability. There's judgment one day for those who are in power. How about just even that perspective? That power is not a mean in itself, right? Because there's a greater power in Christ, in the King of Kings, who one day will judge you. How about that in our government, saying that we have someone looking over everyone's shoulder?
And I think that is a problem, right? When you have a secular government and all that matters is power, which kind of leads us to another leading story in our news cycle. Our prayers go out to former President Biden. Obviously, everyone should be concerned with the latest diagnosis, which is a pretty aggressive form, I guess, of prostate cancer.
Stage 4, I believe.
Stage 4.
Bones, yeah.
And again, whether you agree with his policies or not, obviously as Christians, we are called to pray for those who are leading us and who have led us. So our hearts and prayers go out to President Biden, former President Biden. But talk about the larger issue that's looming here, because again, it is definitely a worldview issue that we need to point out.
Well,
and that's basically what looks like a cover-up.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, there's interviews with all the leading surgeons and doctors and urologists who are expertise on this. And the consensus from what I read is basically that there's no way they didn't know about this when he's in office, that he already had this cancer. Like, he didn't develop this aggressive stage 4 in the last 100 days. And that this was something that happened while he was in office, if not even before he came to office. And again,
you're saying again, the president of the United States is getting like pretty good health coverage.
Yeah, like there is a
no one should have been surprised about this.
There's an intense scrutiny of his health, and he's all kind of checkup stuff. And obviously there was a book that just came out called Original Sin by Jake Tapper, who I'm not a big fan of Jake Tapper myself, but basically that kind of chronicles the cover up that's happened. This is a Democrat writing about other Democrats.
Well, and just to point out again, it doesn't matter what party you came from. We all watch the same news. When the president of the United States gets lost on stage, doesn't know where he is, doesn't know how to get off the stage without help, and sometimes falls down on the stage, obviously you have a person who is in serious mental decline and serious declining health. I don't have to be a top-notch doctor to recognize we have a problem here, and yet the media acted like absolutely nothing was wrong. Leading Democrats acted like everything is just fine. And this is the leader of the free world. And so the questions that people began, at least thinking people, began to raise was, who's running the country?
Absolutely. Who has access to the nuclear codes? These are
the auto pen.
Yeah, exactly. Who's making those decisions?
Yeah,
is it
which
really,
just terrifying
is it
all
really
of us?
the
That's
person that was supposedly everyone voted for, or is it somebody else? And again, this diagnosis of this cancer, again, just adds to this whole picture of what happened in the last 4 years. And again, I don't have all the facts in front of me. I don't know all the details. But to me, the evidence seems to point to, again, another sense of cover-up. But again, I'm asking the question, how could that happen in our nation in which these handlers, these people, these doctors, these people who are in the circle will keep something so important? And again, this is not a D or R issue, because I could totally see ours doing the same thing, because you want to preserve power. Again, why is this related to worldview? It's because, again, you take any type of divine authority away from the government. I'm not talking about symbolic. I'm talking about like actual, like truly believe in true accountability and judgment one day. You take that whole thing out of the pictures, and what do you have? You worship absolute power. And therefore you do whatever it takes to keep yourself in power, whether it's cover up or not letting the public know the news, or having your news buddy silence the truth, whatever it is to get to the truth. And that is a scary place to be.
So at this point, the president had become nothing more than a party or a political placeholder. It's just somebody that's holding that position so that whatever letters after our party name, DR, whatever, that we still remain in power. And as you said, that is a horrific abuse of God-given authority and of the authority of the people, right? To entrust this person as an elected representative of our citizens, of our nation. when that person cannot function in that job, but you just as you said, out of just pure power, you do whatever you can to keep him propped up. And again, literally, he was propped up, held up, handled, kept up. Sometimes, the message simply regurgitated. It wasn't even a message he was coming up with.
Yeah, you ask these questions like, who actually made those decisions? Who made those appointees? Who actually signed those documents? Who signed those pardons? Was it really the person that was supposedly elected, or is it somebody else? These are all questions. And, you read history, you got like figureheads, but you got the real, the visor behind them. I'll go back to
like the puppet master.
The puppet master is like, again, I don't want that to become America. Yeah. I don't like that. Whether I agree or disagree with the president or not, I don't want that president to be a figurehead. That's not good for the nation.
Well, what else is happening, which is actually, I think, a good thing wherever there's corruption, is eventually when you have a party that is practicing corruption, meaning everybody has secrets on everybody, eventually they start to cannibalize. And it sounds like there's a lot of cannibalizing taking place right now among the Democratic Party. They're a party certainly in disarray. I saw Bill Maher making political commentary. Now, when Bill Maher was making political commentary on the left, it basically said that the party that doesn't know the difference between men and women, it can't define men and women, and it was pushing this radical LGBTQ agenda on America, is now the party who's supporting those who are in favor of Palestinian terrorists who slaughtered all these people in Israel. We're actually defending them. Something that is so heinous, something so vile, and yet that's what this party's lead issues are. And when Bill Maher says you're out of touch, certainly no conservative or no Republican. I think you got a party that's in massive disarray and that's really eating itself, cannibalizing itself. And supposedly that book by
Jake Tapper.
He's probably trying to save his own skin, but he's evidently exposing a lot.
As far as I understand, he's in it himself. I mean, he's part of the cover.
Yep.
But I saw an interview.
CNN. I mean, the beacon of truth, right?
Well, I saw an interview. Someone asked Chuck Schumer about it, and Schumer would just his response was, "We're not looking at the past. We're moving forward. We're not looking at the past. We're moving forward."
A convenient response when your past is full of all kinds of skeletons.
Oh, man, you just copy and paste to every single difficult question ever, right? We're not looking at the past. We're looking forward. We're not looking at the past. When you give that type of copy and paste response, I mean, there's no way to spin it. There's no way to spin it. Again, to me, it's not even just a D issue. I'm sure Republicans in the past, I'm sure Republicans in the future, power, if you worship power, this is what will happen. But I hope this be a warning to those who says there is no higher authority. Power is the ultimate means. That is bad for the nation. That's bad for them. And a nation cannot thrive, cannot be healthy with those leadership.
We talk about stage 4 aggressive cancer. Corruption is a stage 4 aggressive cancer on a nation. And I know a lot of intercessors and God-fearing people, patriots, people who love this country, have been praying that corruption is exposed. We've been praying this for a long, long time because you got to get the sickness out. You have to be aggressive in going after that kind of cancer, or the whole thing eventually crumbles. Your nation rots from within. And so, again, this is a good sign, whether it's on either side of the aisle, whoever's been corrupt and misusing the sacred position that they've been entrusted with, it should be exposed. We have to get back to public service and what that means, and loving America and putting America first, not putting people's own private agendas first.
So this is the reason why having that painting, that picture, putting back is important. This is not just symbolic. It's not just a tribute to the right wing. No, it's saying something. It's saying there's a greater power than us.
And isn't it interesting? This painting has been hanging in that hallowed place for 80 years. Nobody ever had a problem with it until recently. It was never, oh, you're violating the separation of church. This is a sick, warped ideology that has been foisted upon us in recent years that we need to uproot. It's a wicked idea, and it's not part of who we are as Americans to have a hostile approach toward Christ, to the gospel, toward God Almighty. That is antithetical to our nation and our values. So let's get into, I want to talk a lot about some of the biggest issues facing us today in the news today. Let's start with President Trump, because he is a transformational leader. I had somebody talk to me about, hey, what do you think about all this going on over in Saudi Arabia in the Middle East? And I'll just say this: we finally have a leader who is just that, a leader. Leaders lead. Leaders, leaders make deals. Leaders care about America. Leaders meet with people. Leaders talk. Leaders are movers and shakers. And for so many years, we've had bureaucrats and politicians. We haven't had leaders. So I think what he's doing is absolutely transformational. I don't know that we've seen anything like it, at least in a long, long time. But President Trump was doing what he does best, and that's deal making. So he was with the leaders of Saudi Arabia and Qatar this week. And Tony Perkins, I had a very, very good op-ed. It was called "Man Cannot Live on Business Alone." And he said President Trump was right. He said, he went on to say, I opposed Bush era notion of nation building from the beginning. The belief that with enough money, one could till the soil of Islamic authoritarianism and plant the seeds of freedom endemic to our constitutional public was rooted in a deeply flawed worldview. It was a fool's errand, Tony says, to think that drafting a constitution for Afghanistan would give rise to a nation that recognizes and protects God-given rights. Freedom is not the product of imposed institutions. It springs from a transformed people, something politics, foreign aid, and even business alone can never produce. What do you think about that? I mean, Tony's basically saying we're silly to think we can go over and hand the Afghans an American copy of our Constitution, and if they'll embrace this and put it into law, all of a sudden the nation's going to be radically transformed. What do you think about nation building and from a worldview perspective?
And this is very costly too, right? This is billions and not trillion dollars spent in I don't know how many words, endless lives being lost for us. So this is not just in theory. We try to do this, and the outcome has been catastrophic. I think a lot of these terrorist state came from our attempt at nation building.
Well, let's go to some of the fundamental assumptions. Mm-hmm. The idea that, hey, you guys just haven't figured out like our great ideas over here. In other words, the problem is ignorance. If we just share with you, kind of the secret sauce, like this is how we do it. Here's our declaration. Here's our Constitution. If you guys just follow some of these ideas, then you'll get the same cake. You follow the same recipe, you'll get the same cake. I remember some of the crazy liberal notions, when we were watching in horror while ISIS was beheading people, and we had liberals saying that this was actually caused by global warming. Remember that? I mean, I just was like, you people are absolutely brain dead. So supposedly global warming caused a lack of resources, which led to a lack of jobs, which led to people running around chopping other people's heads off. And if we could just get global warming under control, get the climate under control, we could create some good jobs, and then all these people would be great, global citizens. No, the problem is not ignorance. The problem is ideology, and the problem is culture. And you can't just change culture with the snap of a finger. You can't produce American productivity, the American rule of law, American love for freedom by FedExing a copy of our Constitution to Saudi Arabia and thinking that somehow that's going to change everything. But it's kind of been a naive nation that if we just go over, or a naive notion, if we go over and start nation building and just give them the blueprints, that we'll have all these thriving democracies.
It's clear it doesn't work. Like, what's the phrase? You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make the horse drink. It's interesting because nation building is actually fundamental to the Old Testament. God himself initiated nation building.
Talk about that. Where in the Bible do we see nation building?
Well, the whole book of Exodus and beyond, and then on and on.
Deuteronomy is an actual
all
blueprint.
the way to all the kings. Okay, nation building began from Exodus and all the way through the New Testament. I would say God did nation building, and eventually he's like, you know what? I'm going to send my son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit to transform people's hearts. I mean, it's a summary, right? I don't think God made any mistakes, but basically he was demonstrating to us the process of what is it really to change people. If it's a simple lecture and just giving people a blueprint, oh my goodness, that will make life so much easier.
Well, and that's
not how this works.
Basically what the law was. I mean, when God he said, thou shalt not, he was basically saying, hey, look, if you guys want to thrive as a people and community, don't take your neighbor's wife, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't covet, don't be jealous of what your neighbor has. I mean, that's in effect what the book of Deuteronomy was about, was teaching them how to thrive as a nation.
Well, it's interesting, right? So to start from the beginning, you got a bunch of Israelites for 400 years or so. They were slaves.
Yep, in Egypt.
They were orphans and slaves. That's all they know. They're just survivalists. They're just trying to just make it. It's like probably dog eat dog. They were fighting each other. Moses trying to break up fights, and God, through his demonstration of his power, freed them. Right? They're like, you're free. Not so simple, right?
He took them out of Egypt.
He took them out of Egypt, but they're not free in their mind and their culture and their heart. So God gave them these crazy blessings and food and water. I mean, talk about like giving them like aid, food, quail, manna and quail, water.
So they had no material lack. Let's make that clear.
Yep.
God actually gave them a portable air conditioning system from the desert heat. He had the cloud by day, and he gave them a heating system at night.
Yep.
So they were cool during the day, they were warm at night, and they had all the food they wanted to eat. In fact, they had manna from heaven to feed them. But they still grumbled. They still complained.
They were so compliant that Moses wanted to kill himself because he couldn't handle it.
I was just saying, God, what have you done? If you think you love me, this isn't love. Kill me.
so I mean, again, I'm not trying to throw them on the bus. This is how tough nation building is, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because even in the Levitical law, we think about 10 Commandments. No, there are so many laws, and people always mock the different laws. If you read the laws, you from a historical perspective, you realize these people don't even have basic sanitary understanding. Like if you're going to the bathroom, don't do it right next to where you sleep.
Right.
Go a little bit further away, dig a hole.
Things that we assume as common knowledge now, we're not common knowledge.
We're not common knowledge. He was literally building nations from scratch. And again, what happened? The result was they had to wander around the desert for 40 years. So the whole new generation, a whole brand new culture that didn't really understand that the Egyptian, the slavery can come up, and then they can go into the promised land. That's how tough nation building is.
Absolutely. And it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't work because fundamentally we have to deal with the human heart. And your nation will reflect your worldview, and your worldview is reflective of what you worship. And so we get back, I want to highlight a couple things here. So for instance, if you have this idea that if we can just change people's environment, then you'll actually change people, right? In other words, we talked about this in our worldview class a couple weeks ago, that the problem isn't me. The problem is what's outside of me. And so Tony brings up a good point here. He said nation building is flawed thinking that's cut from the same ideological cloth as Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society. After 50 years, it's cost taxpayers more than $22 trillion to show for it in terms, with little to show for it, rather, in terms of human flourishing. So we spent $22 trillion. We still have the same challenges that we had when it was started. He says the worldview behind the Great Society is more closely aligned with Karl Marx. And Marx said it's not the consciousness of men, or in other words, their worldview that determines their being, but their social being that determines their consciousness. In other words, if you bless people materially, then they'll think right about life, and they'll flourish. But the Bible says just the other way around. As a man thinks, so is he. So in other words, Marx said material reality shapes identity. A belief that external change creates internal transformation.
Let me just interrupt you real quick. So just to again, let's talk about that that concept of if you're blessed with material wealth, that will also enforce character within you. I mean, just Google basic.
People do bad things because they have lack, or they're born in poverty, or whatever.
Right. So just do a basic search into those who have won the lottery in the last 30 years or so, and look at what happens after a few years. And by and large, you're going to find high percentage, I don't know what percentage of them, ends up going bankrupt. So that's, to me, a very clear evidence that external wealth does not necessarily change the character.
Well, and you already highlighted, too. I mean, we can go back to the garden, perfect environment. We can go back to the children of Israel, again, provided perfectly by the Lord in their wanderings, and brought into the promised land, a land of blessing, a land where they would enjoy things other people actually had worked for, and enjoy amazing fruit and blessing. So it's not the external, it's not the material. And Tony brings up a good point here. He says, we engage with the Middle East, we must recognize that business deals and wealth creation alone will not cause authoritarian regimes to abandon totalitarianism or their tolerance for terrorism. As we've seen, and this is profound, it will only give them more resources to threaten the West. So when you bless a totalitarian nation, or you lead them into economic prosperity where they have more money, we saw this in Gaza. Who's the group in Gaza, the terrorist
Hamas.
Hamas. There's not been a lack of resources for the Palestinian people. It's that Hamas takes the resources and turns it into tunnels and bombs, because that's their ideology. They're not caring for people. They're not feeding people. There's not a lack of food. The lack of food was caused, and the lack of resources was caused because wicked people will take resources and use them to kill people that they hate. And so until you deal with the worldview of Hamas, and until you deal with the worldview of much of the Middle East, you're going to just simply create wealth that will then be used to attack the West, which they hate. They hate everything that we believe, everything that we stand for. They hate our worldview. So, it's an interesting take. And I liked what you were saying, though, about Trump understanding his lane. That he gets it. He's not there to try to turn Saudi Arabia into, the East, the America of the East. He's there to protect America.
He made a comment. He says, it's not my job to judge people's hearts. I'm paraphrasing. He actually said, it's God's job to judge. He says, it's my job to protect American people. And when I heard that, man, I'm not always the biggest Donald Trump fan in general. I mean, I like a lot of what he's doing. But when I heard that, I was like, that resonated with me. Like, I want a guy who understands his lane. Because if you try to do all things and be to all people, you're going to do nothing well. I want a person who's identified, hey, there are 4 things I want to do really, really well. And one thing is to protect the American people. If you're a president of the state, isn't that your job, like one of your top priorities?
I would say that the first and foremost fundamental responsibility of the leader of our nation is just that, to protect America and American interest. So when we talk about America first, this isn't some nationalistic idea that somehow all we care about is ourselves and we don't care about anybody else. No, your fundamental responsibility as the president of America is to care for America. That's just, if you're the leader of Germany, you should be caring for German interests. It's this globalist, utopian, fake, illogical, irrational worldview that somehow we're all going to sing Kumbaya and live happily ever after. This anti-nationalist, anti-borders approach that's leading to the destruction of our nations. It's the understanding that no, nations exist for a reason. In other words, something pulled that group of people together, and that they're together because they have a shared sense of values. That's why they're Americans, or that's why they're whatever other nation you are. Something pulls you together and gives you a cultural consensus and cohesiveness around a certain group of values, and the leader of that group's job is to protect that nation.
If your priority is your kids, I'm not going to fault you for it. But in fact, I should honor you to say, hey, I can't care about every kid in the world, but I'm at least going to take care of my kids.
Exactly.
That's godly.
Yes.
And for you to not fault me for saying, yeah, I know your kids, but I got to prioritize my kids. Now, it doesn't mean I won't care about your kids too, but my number one priority is to take care of I'm their dad. right?
Absolutely.
That's godly. That's right. That's rightful.
And unless you have a higher degree from a state university that has completely turned you into a moron, everybody gets this. Like, we just want to go about our business. We want to get up. We want to raise our families. We want to go to work. We want to pursue our God-given callings. We want to worship God freely, and we want to do it in a nation that has borders and is protected and is strong. You know, so even Trump, with some of the things that he was saying about what Greenland and Panama Canal, and you know, everybody's like, oh, you know, he's just simply letting our enemies know that he understands national security, and he understands where there are potential weaknesses, and he's doing something about it. Again, only leftists freak out about that. Anybody that cares about America and about our safety is going, thank you, Mr. President, for being concerned about us.
Well, there's another issue which most people don't understand, which I didn't understand. I was listening to, I think, Kevin O'Leary, is that the guy?
Yeah.
The guy from Shark Tank?
Yeah.
He was saying how, you know, we have been the forefront of artificial intelligence, which is the technology, whether you like it or not, is coming. China has been second. But the third is actually Arab nations.
Wow.
Which I didn't know about.
They have an incredible amount of wealth.
And technology they're the third, okay, these Arab nations. And what he did is he basically went and said, build that relation and connection with these nations to basically says, build alliance with us on artificial intelligence so that you're not linking China. Because China is the one who's trying to, you know, take advantage or build relationship, all that. So that's a strategic partnership that most people don't even understand.
Yep.
That Trump says, hey, get on our side, build great relationship with them.
And back to worldview. Again, it's not Chinese people that we should be concerned about. It is communist ideology. It is Chinese government that we should be concerned about, because we know communism as a worldview is totalitarian. It seeks to dominate. It has a global plan. So everything is viewed through that false ideology. So should we be concerned about the Chinese? Absolutely. What do the Chinese have in common with the Russians? The same ideology, only slightly different, but it's still communist. It's still global. It's still takeover. What do those two have together with the Muslim nations who are driven by Islam? It is a similar worldview, and it is totalitarian, and it has plans for global takeover and global conquest. The only difference between Christianity and those worldviews, we also, by the way, have a vision for global conquering and dominion, but it's not with a sword, and it's not by coercion. It's by the propagation of the gospel. It is by preaching the good news of Jesus. But I mean, you know, Jesus is king of the world. This cosmos belongs to him, not only planet Earth, but everything belongs to him. And he's coming back, and he's given us a couple of mandates, the Great Commission and the cultural mandate to take dominion. That is to preach the gospel, to teach people how to flourish under the reign of Jesus Christ. So all these worldviews have a globalist vision in terms of dominion and takeover. The difference is the other three are by violence and the sword. Our worldview is by love and persuasion and the preaching of the good news of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, peace through strength. We don't want war. We don't want more conflict. We don't want people dying, but we want free exchange of ideas so the ideas can flow, and the best ideas can come to the top. And
absolutely.
You know, for us as Christians, we simply want a level playing field so that we can share our ideas and go back to nation building. That's the original nation building. It's a bunch of Christians who martyred their lives in the Roman Empire and care for the poor and care for the orphans and care for the plague laden population that end up taking over empires, not with swords, is through love,
through true service, through true sacrifice. And these are values that are deeply instilled. And maybe I'll do this. You know, we're gonna actually do some pre-recording of future podcasts early here because of some holiday schedules and travel and all that. But why don't we do this, because we're about out of time today. I want to read from Galatians chapter 3, verse 28. This is as a model for nation building, or true nation building. It says, there is no longer Jew or Gentile, slave or free, male or female, for you are all one in Christ. That's Galatians 3, verse 28. We have this notion now, we've heard this little buzzword from the left, they say diversity is strength. And so whenever we're trying to deal now with all of these illegals who came into our country under the Biden administration, were actually welcomed in through zero
and
border.
Put into very nice hotels.
Put in nice hotels.
You and I wouldn't be able to afford.
We have, by the way, we have a state right next to us facing massive economic challenges. Chicago, as a city, facing massive economic deficits, all because we're not only letting folks in, we're not vetting them. There is no assimilation process. We have no idea who we're letting in. President Trump has already pointed out that we've let in all types of gang members and violent folks, rapists, murderers. We've had no assimilation process, so we just let everybody into our country, and then we support them in ridiculous ways with taxpayer dollars, and then we come up with these stupid bumper sticker kind of slogans. Diversity is our strength. Well, it depends on what you mean by that. But at face value, we all know that diversity without assimilation is not a strength. In other words, if you just let people come in with all kinds of crazy ideas, they cannot become a part of our community. They might live in your community, but they never assimilate. And I think the passage we read there in Galatians 3 is really a picture. It's like when you are in Christ, you drop all the distinctions that have been used to separate us. In other words, it's not Jew versus Gentile. It's Christ. We now find our identity in someone greater than ourselves who holds us all together. Now, that is a spiritual principle, is a biblical principle. But when you look at our national motto, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. Out of many, one. The idea of America was that if you were a German, Chinese, European, Asian, wherever you came from, African, wherever you came from, when you came into this country, you literally left your skin behind you. Your skin color was not the determining factor of your new identity. Your new identity was that you were now an American. And so we didn't have adjectives describing American. That didn't happen until the radicals of the 70s, actually, started classifying Americans according to Hispanic, African, whatever the situation might be. Prior to that, there were no distinctions. You went through an assimilation process, and you understood that if you're coming into this country, you were embracing a whole set of values and a whole new identity. You were no longer, in my situation, a German. I'm now an American. Not that I was left, good German food or good German cooking or whatever behind. We certainly enjoyed that, but we had a greater identity that pulled us together, and that was we were Americans. That we're going to talk about that and the upcoming podcast, because this whole idea of just, diversity is going to make America strong. Actually, the opposite is happening if there's not a cohesive set of beliefs and values that we all embrace when coming to this country. And I think we have a lot to talk about there. So the whole idea of immigration, assimilation, and the health of a nation, and what that looks like, and why in some ways, I'll just say this, what President Trump is doing now to take people out of this country who are a criminal element and who have an ideological hatred for this country is probably more important, I guess, to our national health and safety than probably anything else he's doing right now, because nations get destroyed from within. And if we do not know who we are as a nation, we're in big trouble. We're going to be alluding to some books here. This one by David Landis called The Wealth and Poverty of Nations, and a host of books here by Samuel Huntington, a Harvard professor, Culture Matters, How Values Shape Human Progress, Who Are We? The Challenge to America's National Identity, and another classic by him, The Clash of Civilizations and the Remaking of World Order. Basically, one of his major fundamental premises is that it's not the material world, it's not natural resources, it's not geography, fundamentally, that lead to a nation's greatness. It is culture. And so we're going to look at that in the podcast ahead, talking about the importance of culture, national identity, and leading to a nation's flourishing. So I'm looking forward to that.
Give a plug for Bill Federer.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, Bill Federer coming this Sunday. And Bill Federer is probably one of the leading Christian historians. The guy has an amazing understanding of the ideas, kind of like this, ideas that shape America and that led to who we are and that led to these things that we love so much about freedom in our country. Where did all these ideas come from? As you look through the flow of history, how did America get to be America, this nation that we so love and so appreciate? And where do these values come from that have really shaped who we are as a people? So he's going to be, just to clarify, he's going to be sharing, don't forget, we start this Sunday with our brand new service times, which are at
9 and 11.
9 and 11.
Two services,
and they're going to be packed. So I encourage you, get here early. Not too early, though, because there won't be any parking places.
Not too early.
Get here early for first service, but not too early for second service. But Bill is also going to be sharing on Sunday night from 6 to 8. We're going to give him lots of room to run. In fact, we were laughing because we just got his slides. There are over 400 slides on a PowerPoint presentation. He will not be able to cover all of them, but that just tells you he has a lot of wisdom and a lot of great things to share. So I'm very, very, thanks for pointing that out. I'm very, very excited about this coming Sunday. So, hey, we'll look forward, if we don't hear from you before then, we'll look forward to seeing you Sunday. Have a great week.